no matter what. Even if you think divorce is the answer, I'll stand by you. Her words were a balm, but they couldn't quite heal the growing wound in my heart. The change in Ethan was like night and day. I reminisced about the man I fell in love with, the one who'd surprise me with midnight picnics and lazy Sunday drives. Now, getting him to share a meal at the table felt like an achievement. Our conversations had turned into monologues, with me playing the lead and Ethan the disinterested audience. "Babe, can we talk? It feels like you're miles away lately," I'd say, trying to bridge the distance. "Yeah, sure. Just let me finish this thing for work," he'd reply, his eyes never leaving the screen of his laptop. But later never came. It was always some project, some deadline that kept him tethered to that damn computer and miles away from our marriage. Mom saw right through me, the worry lines etched deep in my face mirroring her own. "Life's too short, darling. You deserve happiness, with or without him. Don't forget that." Her words echoed in my mind long after our visits. Ethan's transformation from the loving partner, who'd once held me through the night during my darkest times, to this indifferent shadow of a man was baffling. It wasn't just the absence of laughter or the dwindling conversations. It was the lack of interest in anything that concerned me or us. My achievements at the clinic, once celebrated with champagne, now went unnoticed. My worries, once soothed by his words, now lingered in the air between us, unaddressed. I couldn't help but wonder where it all went wrong. Was it the pressure of our unspoken grief over not having children? Or had Ethan simply fallen out of love with me, leaving his body beside me as his heart wandered off somewhere I couldn't reach? The more I pondered, the more I realized how much I leaned on Mom's strength and wisdom. She was my guiding light in the fog that my marriage had become. And as I watched her battle her own demons with a grace I admired, I knew I had to find the strength to face mine. Whether Ethan was by my side or not, I was determined to find my way back to happiness, with Mom's unwavering support lighting the path ahead. That morning, the call came like a bolt from the blue. The voice on the other end, too clinical, too detached, informed me my world had just crumbled. "I'm sorry to tell you, your mother passed away early this morning," the nurse said, her voice a flat note in a cold symphony of my despair. I stood there, phone in hand, feeling like I'd been punched in the gut. The tears came hard and fast, a torrent of grief that I couldn't stem. Through the blur, I dialed Ethan, my voice a cracked whisper of the devastation rocking me. "Ethan, it's Mom. She's gone," I managed to get out between sobs. There was a pause, a silence that stretched too long. "Oh, Kelly. Is that all? What about the inheritance stuff? Did they say anything?" Ethan's voice was cold, distant, as if he was talking about a stranger's misfortune, not the death of the woman who'd been like a mother to him too. I felt a punch in the gut. "Seriously? That's your first question? My mom just died, Ethan." "Look, Kelly, I'm slammed at work. Can we talk about this later? Maybe tonight?" His voice was as cold as ice, not a drop of sympathy or love. The rest of the day was a blur. I couldn't focus on my patients, couldn't stop the tears, couldn't believe my mom was gone. And Ethan? His reaction kept replaying in my mind, adding salt to an open wound. Home didn't feel like home that evening. It felt like I was walking into a negotiation, not a place of love and comfort. Ethan was there, all right, looking as if he was gearing up for a board meeting rather than comforting his grieving wife. "So, about your mom's passing?" he started, no preamble. "It's sad, yeah, but we need to think about the future. This could be good for us, financially speaking." I stared at him, disbelief and anger mingling with my grief. "Good for us? My mom just died, and all you can think about is money? What happened to you, Ethan? Where's the guy I married?" He shrugged, a gesture so dismissive it stung. "I'm being realistic. We've got to look at the big picture here. Life goes on, and this inheritance could really help us out. That's when it hit me. The man standing in front of me was a stranger, his words slicing through the last threads of what I thought our marriage was. I missed my mom more than ever, not just for her loss, but for the absence of her guidance in this moment of utter disbelief and betrayal. "How can you be so heartless?" I asked, the fight draining out of me. "My world is shattered, and you're counting cash." Ethan didn't blink. "Life's tough, Kelly. Best get used to it. We'll talk more when you're thinking clearly." "About the will, I mean." I realized then and there, no amount of money, no inheritance, could fill the void my mother's passing had left, nor could it bridge the chasm between Ethan and me. This was more than loss, it was a revelation of true colors, a beacon of how alone I truly was in my grief. The day of my mom's funeral was a storm of emotions, a whirlwind of grief and disbelief swirling inside me. The ceremony was set, a final goodbye to the woman who'd been my everything. Family, friends, even folks from the clinic where I worked, they all showed up, their faces etched with sorrow and support. But Ethan, my husband, was nowhere to be seen. As the service went on, whispers began to circulate. "Where's Ethan? Isn't that her husband's seat empty?" The absence of my supposed life partner at such a critical moment was a glaring, painful hole in the proceedings. I could feel the pitying glances, the unspoken questions. I stepped out, needing a moment, and dialed Ethan, my hands trembling with a cocktail of rage and despair. "Where are you?" "The service is about to start," I said, my voice, barely above a whisper, choked with grief. "I told you, I've got that big project deadline. I can't just drop everything." Ethan's voice was sharp, impatient. "But it's my mom's funeral, Ethan. Can't your work wait for just one day?" I could feel the tears threatening to spill over again, frustration mingling with sorrow. "Look, I'm sorry, but this is important. We'll talk later," he said before hanging up, leaving me with the dial tone and a heart heavy with betrayal. Standing there, phone in hand, I felt the weight of his absence like a physical blow. The people who came to offer their condolences noticed it too, their whispered words a mixture of sympathy and disapproval. "Where's Ethan, Kelly? Couldn't he make it?" Aunt Clara asked, her brows knitting together in concern and something else, judgment, maybe. "He's caught up with work," I replied, the lie bitter in my mouth. "Couldn't get away." She shook her head, patting my hand with a sigh. "You're too good for him, dear." The ceremony passed in a blur, each eulogy, each hymn, a reminder of the support I lacked from the one person who had vowed to be there through better or worse. The absence of my husband was a silent scream in the solemnity, his empty chair an echo of the void now in my life. After the burial, as I stood by my mother's final resting place, my cousin Michael approached, his expression a mix of anger and concern. "Kelly, I can't